So I never thought much about growing roses. I thought they would be too high maintenance to fool with. And then I read this really cool article about a farm in southern France. And this farm has the exclusive contract with Chanel to grow the roses that are used in Chanel No. 5 perfume. Chanel No. 5 apparently is mostly jasmine and roses. And so southern France, I always think of those lavender fields. And historically, it was a tannery region where they would, you know, tan hides, and it used to stink really bad. And then I think that's what kind of started these people growing flowers, was to get rid of the smell. So I read this article, and I was very curious about what variety of rose they were using, because I thought, I want to try to grow that here in Tennessee. And I researched and researched and researched, and I couldn't find a darn nursery that grew them. So they're called centefolia roses or cabbage roses. They're an old school heirloom variety also known as 100-petal roses. They're like a cotton candy pink, really, really strong fragrance. And I have a very good friend in London. I found them in London, and she shipped them to me, and then the FDA intercepted them. But I didn't give up. I found them in 2 nurseries in the US. One is Heirloom Roses out in Oregon, and the other is High Country Roses just outside Denver. And High Country Roses has a lot of old school varieties. They sell roses in kind of a quart size. What we're going to be planting today is an heirloom rose. You can see it's a gallon size. And both of the farms, they have an incredible variety on their website. All of the roses I've ordered from both are extremely healthy. They advertise as being own root roses, which is the opposite, would be like you have a rootstock and a graft, like I've talked about with the fruits. And they promote using own root, because when you have a graft and like a scion, you have a very weak point in the plant. If it's own rooted, it was propagated and rooted so that there's no weak point, like that disease, you know, that would break easily or disease could get in. So this is my first time planting roses. Everything I've read says that roses need full sun, well-drained soil, a neutral pH. They said to dig the hole twice as deep and twice as wide as whatever the pot is, because apparently roses can get a little bit root bound. They need some encouragement to explore. So I've got the hole dug pretty good. And again, this is a cabbage rose from Heirloom Roses. This is, I'm gonna start a perfumery here pretty much. So it's rooted pretty well. I'm gonna encourage the roots just a little bit. Put it down in here. And you know, I was very curious. I thought, how did this contract start? How did this flower farm get the exclusive contract? And you know, it kind of turned into another thing where I was very curious about Chanel, Coco Chanel. And turns out, you know, she's a French lady. She grew up in a very poor family. Her mom died. And then she grew up in a convent. Apparently her dad, I think, was too poor to raise her or couldn't raise her. So she moved into a convent with nuns, and the nuns taught her how to sew. So the big fashion designer had a very, very humble beginning in a French convent learning how to sew from nuns. I just thought that was really special and interesting. Okay, so what I'm trying to do here is I've got the root ball in, or the plant in. I want it kind of level at this point. From what I've read, they like really high organic matter. So I've got some aged horse manure that I'm gonna put around. And because roses like really well-drained soil, I bought some paver. Now, if I did this again, I wouldn't have bought, this is actually patio base. I would have bought paver sand. I wasn't paying attention. You know, it'll work. I just should have bought more of a sand than like a paver base, but it's okay. The idea is to kind of create some porosity in the soil, and you can see it's gonna do that. I've also got here from Stark Brothers Mills Magic Rose Mix. And this is tricky because it has some blood meal in it, and I know the dogs are gonna smell it and wanna dig, so I'm not gonna put a ton, but that's supposed to be a really good fertilizer. So here we got our paver sand, our paver base, compost, and we're gonna cover it back up. See, it's a lot of clay here. So need more compost in here, some good old manure. Cover it back up. So So I've bought several other varieties of roses, mostly the old school kind. From what I've read, the old school is like, you get that real beautiful smell. Now they don't bloom as frequently, like they might bloom once or twice throughout the summer, but when they bloom, it's supposed to just be really incredible. So I've got about 10 roses that I'm planting this summer, and I'm really excited to learn about it. Who knows, maybe once this blooms, I'll end up making some perfume, you know, put Chanel out of business. So here we go today, and I'll do some videos about, you know, how it progresses.